Betsy Ross and Kristen Schlotmann. Betsy is the founder and president of Game Day Communications. She is an Emmy Award-winning sports reporter and anchor who most recently was an anchor at ESPN. She's also an adjunct professor here at Xavier and her two alma maters, Ball State University and the University of Notre Dame. She is going to have an intimate conversation with Kristen Schlotmann. Welcome to the stage, ladies, Betsy and Kristen.
Thank you very much for that nice introduction. Appreciate it. And thank all of you for being here. We are so excited to have you back for our second Game Changers, and we are very thrilled to have all of you here. Before we start that conversation with Kristen, I do want to throw out some names and numbers to all of you. Let's throw out names like George Clooney. That's always good. George Clooney, Cate Blanchett, Robert De Niro, people that you've heard of. How about Glenn Close, Zac Efron, Timothy Chalamet, Austin Butler. He was Elvis, if you saw that movie. Now, what do all these people have in common? They have shot major motion pictures here in the last few years. And let me throw out some numbers to you. The big number is $80 million. $80 million. That is the economic impact of the film industry here for the 2 years before COVID. $80 million. This is what the film industry has done here in our area. And leading the charge for Film Cincinnati, as you heard, is Kristen Schlotmann. And Kristen has done all that work. So congratulations for all that work that you've done.
Thank you.
So now that we talked about Film Cincinnati and everything that surrounds it, people may have heard of Film Cincinnati. They certainly have seen probably some of the crews that have been around town over the last few years. But tell us a little bit about Film Cincinnati, exactly what it is and what you do.
I mean, it used to be the city's best kept secret, but I feel like people are starting to learn more and more about us as you hear major motion pictures shutting down your neighborhood streets or seeing famous people in the restaurants. But Film Cincinnati has actually been around since 1987. It was founded by a woman named Lori Holiday because there was a need for someone to take around the film crews for a movie called Rain Man, which had called the state of Ohio and asked for some help in identifying Midwestern locales for that particular film. And that's what spawned Film Cincinnati. We were later incorporated as a 501c3 in 1991. We were the first film commission in the country to be set up like a nonprofit. And we went on to be the first one to cross state lines and be a regional film office. And we're now one of the oldest long-running film commissions in the world. But it still feels like a new day every day. It still feels like you're fighting to build an industry every day, and I think that's why I still love it, because it's never going to be easy in this part of the country. But the impact that major motion pictures have on our community, the jobs and dollars that they create, that's what we care about. Certainly, the celebrities get the headlines. But it's the 98% of the people that never step foot on the red carpet is what we care about. And that's the community that we're building here in Greater Cincinnati.
And we talked about, you mentioned that it is a 501c3, it is a nonprofit. But you really run Film Cincinnati as a business because you are out there, you're hustling, you're bringing people in to look at sites. I mean, you really are the advocate for this area, for the film industry. So talk about how you run your business like a business instead of a nonprofit. Give us some examples of what you do.
Well, if you just look at entrepreneurialism and filmmaking, just those two words at the start, I mean, the one thing they both have in common is you have to dream big. And there are so many parallels in both of those two words that it just seems like the natural way to run this business, to run this advocacy, to run this dream in Greater Cincinnati. I knew as a young person growing up in Cincinnati, I wanted to work in the film business. Did I think that film business would be right here? No, that's how it played out. But it was because I dreamt of bringing an industry here that wasn't already here, like the opera, like the arts and culture of the fabric we have in this town that are just iconic, being the ballet and the opera and the symphony. And was I really going to get film to be part of that tradition here? And it's a big dream, and it's a lot like being an entrepreneur. And the first part of that role is really educating people of the benefits and seeing the mechanics of what it would take to put in place to be successful. And building an industry is like building a business, it's like building a company, and you have to have all those things in place because you want it to not only be successful, but you want it to be sustainable. And so if we out of the gate, as a state said, come to Ohio, we're gonna give you 50% back on your budget. We'll give you 50 just to get you here. Is that sustainable as a state? No. And and then if we say, hey, come move here, we have a film business here, but it's really only 2 movies a year. Is that sustainable? No. So what we have to do is grow this in a thoughtful way that makes sense not only to local industry and local business and local entrepreneurs, but also that makes sense to the film industry that is growing so largely on the coasts of the United States and now all over the world. But we have to make it make sense for everyone. So I will tell you, and this is, I don't know, kind of embarrassing, but also maybe the reason we've been successful, but motion pictures, they chase tax credits, right? That is what brings the business here. And without having tax credits, we would have never been successful. I spent 10 years studying tax credits, registering as a lobbyist for the state of Ohio, driving up to Columbus 3 times a week, trying to get legislators to understand the importance of this business. And when we finally did get tax credits in place in the state of Ohio, we were the 42nd state. So that's what I thought was embarrassing. I'm like, 42nd state out of it. But in the history of the state of Ohio, there'd never been a transferable tax credit for any industry, let alone for the film industry. And we'd also started to see other states that came out very aggressively that already had done away with their programs. And so while we were late to the game, we wrote a program that we knew would be sustainable. We also grew it very conservatively initially because we thought that would be the best case scenario for bipartisanship in the state of Ohio. So when we launched our motion picture tax credit program in 2010, we said, we'll put up $10 million as a state for you to come here and shoot, and we will give you back 25% as a rebatable tax credit. We'll write you a check. If you spend your money in these sectors that we deem important business for the state of Ohio, no more than $5 million per project, and you must have at least $300,000 to apply for our program. And I remember saying to the state, I said, why a floor? Why 300,000? And I remember the direct response was, well, we don't exactly want to recruit the porn industry. And I was laughing. And I was like, have you seen porn? Like, no one has $300,000 in those production budgets.
How do you know that?
And nor do they shoot on location. I don't know. But that's what the state of Ohio, we wanted to start a floor. So, and while we still have that floor in place, I do want to see at some point that floor, might lower, and the overall cap continue to grow higher. We started at 10 million. We grew it the next biennial years to 20 million. We then went to 40 million, and most recently in July, we have taken the program to 75 million a year. And what that will enable us to do as a state is now anchor continuous series here. So instead of 8 weeks of filming, we have 8 months of filming, and that's the goal.
I didn't know about that floor thing. Now I'm
know,
really
look at
interested.
it.
Yeah. You talked a little bit about the different groups that you work with, and we have heard the term advocacy and how it pertains to this group. You advocate for many groups. You advocate for this region to bring in productions. Once the productions get here, you advocate for them to make sure that they have streets that are blocked and things like that so they can do their work. And you also advocate for the crews. I want to talk separately about what you have done for the crews here, but let's go over just what you do to bring these productions in, because a lot of people think, well, you bring in a production and then you get a cut of what they do and this and that and the other. And it doesn't work that way. But let's look at how you advocate for, first, the region, to be the site for a movie to begin with, and then once those productions get there, how you work with those productions individually so that they get the goods and the sites and the people that they need.
So and that's changed dramatically in the last 20 years. 20 years ago, when I was doing this, I wanted to get directly to the creative person that was making decisions, ostensibly the director. And if I could show the director that they could shoot their movie here and visibly and physically get everything that they wanted creatively, then that was a win for me. Now, where I am today, I want to get directly to either that producer on that film or that studio exec that's going to greenlight the project to show them the business deal of making your film here in Ohio, and then I will back it up with the support of infrastructure and crew base. But it's really about taking those projects, showing them how much it would cost to be made here in Greater Cincinnati, and then with that, showing them exactly what it would look like. So I read a lot of movie scripts, and I break them down, and I can tell you just in reading a movie script about how much I think it would cost to make. Now, I don't know, I'm not looking at who you're signing on as talent, and I'm not looking at, how many people you think you have to bring in for various reasons, but what I'm looking at is I can see, if there's not a lot of special effects and we're not shutting down major thoroughfares and we're in private locations and these kinds of things, then I can tell you it's one size budget versus a high impact, high action, high community involvement type film. Most recently, we did The Wise Guys, which was the Robert De Niro film, which was set in it was over a span of time, but if you're looking at 1950s New York, I can tell you a period film is going to cost a lot more than a contemporary film. So, and what's really cool about The Wise Guys, which will now be called Alto Nights when it comes out in theaters, The Wise Guys was directed by Barry Levinson. Barry Levinson was the guy that called Ohio in 1987 for the movie Rain Man. Same director, okay? And he was the first person that put us on the map, and he's the person that brought back the highest budget we've ever had in Greater Cincinnati. And just for morning coffee talk, the best part about it is so much time had passed, he forgot about ever being here. I digress, but yeah, is that it?
So the work really begins for Kristen when the crews get here, because they do need those locations and they need roads closed and things like that, and she has the magic touch to get those closures and stop the streetcar construction when you needed it for what? For Carol?
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe. But the one thing...
Not only did we need it for Carol, but Kate Blanchett, she was sleeping, we were shooting nights and she was sleeping during the day, and she was at the 21C right when they were laying track for the streetcar. And I remember one of the producers called and they're like, it's really loud, do you have any, and I go, are you asking me if I can stop construction on one of our major transportation projects in the city? Well, I'll make a call, I'll try. No, we didn't stop it, but we figured out a way to do that. But working with the streetcar now that it's up and running, they have a policy of never stopping it regardless of films. So it does create a lot of logistics and management on working with so many different departments in a community when a film is here. And to your point, at the end of the day, while I'm advocating for the film's success here, because I want them to leave here and tell everyone what an incredible experience was here and that they have to come here because they had an office there advocating for them, I also know that they pack up and leave. And I'm staying, and I'm not going anywhere. I want to live in Cincinnati, and I want to be here, and I want my neighbors and fellow business friends and neighbors to be happy at the end of the day when they pack up and leave. It's not successful if I can't make sure it's a win-win for both parties. And it doesn't always happen that way, and I find myself apologizing on behalf of people that told me they were going to do one thing and did something else. And I find myself apologizing and say, I don't know why they told you you can't shut down 4th Street from 2 to 3 a.m. when I know no one is on 4th Street from 2 to 3. But again, apologies. We just figure out ways to make it work. But it is advocating for all of those entities at the same time, because if one is not satisfied, then it doesn't work. The industry doesn't succeed. And it can go away as quickly as it started, which takes us back to that whole entrepreneurial spirit, because you're constantly taking risks to continue that sustainability.
The real wealth that we have here in Greater Cincinnati is the wealth of talent, both in front of the camera and behind the camera here. The cast and crew members who are based here in Greater Cincinnati, that really puts us above and beyond so many other movie sites that of equal size that might be vying for the same movie. And let's face it, the last 2 or 3 years have been very tough for movie crews. First we had COVID, everything was shut down. And then of course these last few months we've been going through strikes for both the writers and for the actors. And hopefully, knock on wood, the actors strike will be over here pretty soon. But it's been tough because you hear about, all right, the writers aren't doing anything, they're striking. The actors aren't doing anything, they're striking. But there are hundreds, thousands of people who work behind the scenes who are out of work because those 2 unions are on strike. And talking about how you advocate for groups, you have advocated for these local crews both during COVID to try to help them out financially, and then just a couple of weeks ago with your backlot gala to help these crews get some money. So that goes above and beyond advocacy, but explain what you did for the crews in those 2 instances to really help out those people that we don't necessarily see, as you say, they're not on the red carpet.
Right, and they're so important. I mean, without them, we don't have production. And, back when we launched the tax credit program in 2010, there were probably 15 people on our local 209 RIATSE roster. And now there's over 600 people on that roster. But these are, and to give you an idea of the demographics there, they are electricians, they are carpenters, they are construction, they are drivers, they are hair and makeup and vanities and stylists and seamstresses, and the list goes on, cooks, chefs, things like this. There are ways for them to pivot and do construction in another field. But if you lose them to that, if they do that, the likelihood of them coming back is usually far less, because the hours that we do work on film productions, they're very concentrated times of production, and we're working 12 to 15-hour days for 10 weeks at a time, and then you get a break. And they realize, if I do go into working with the Broadway series, or I go into working with this, working with constructing highway, and whatever the field is, the hours might be more civilized, they're home for dinner, they're getting a better night's sleep, their quality of life might change, and they've lost their passion for this industry, which is still built by many, many dreamers. So you worry about that. So during COVID, one of the things we put in place, like everyone's trying to program something during COVID to just feel us connected. We would bring professionals into the Zooms from outside entities and let us know what's happening in the world of development, what we're doing on safety measures. We partnered with TriHealth to come up with one of the first places in the country that could go back to work safely. And we used we brought a committee of Tri-Health people together that would be testing, that partnered with Gravity Diagnostics immediately. We put those mechanics in place before projects were allowed to go back to work, so that the unions, then we got in those rooms, those Zooms, with those unions putting their protocols in place and saying, here's what our medical professionals have put in place, feel free to use it. And they did. And then the eyes first went onto this market after COVID, which was really, really exciting. The downside of that was then we're shifting, and 2 years later, we're in a strike, right? But we've already done the Zoom morales, we've already done safety morales, and you're like, I honestly felt paralyzed, much like I'm sure the writers did at first and the actors. I wasn't sure what to do, because I felt like anything I did was going to be cliche, for lack of a better word. It was going to be it's already been done. Morale has already been busted. So what we did is I do one annual fundraiser a year. It's called Backlot, where we create a Hollywood backlot for community members and people not in the industry to come and know what it feels like to be on a movie set, because it satisfies. If I get one call at the office a day, I get it 20 times a day. Can I just come down and watch filming? Can I know what it's like to be? Can I be an extra? They're curious, they see these things, they want to be a part of it. They don't want to work in it full time, but there's that luxury for us of that curiosity. So we'll create a fundraiser around that, and that becomes ultimately Backlot. And this year, I was sitting in a meeting with the Hale Foundation, and we were talking about ways to partner. And she said, what are you doing with everything you have going on? What are you doing to help these local freelancers during the strike? And I felt, in that moment, I felt called out, and I felt really that I was bearing this burden on the shoulders, and that I needed to have an answer to that question, and I needed to have it in that moment. There was enough time that I had to think about it. And I said, we're doing Backlot in 2 months, and I'm going to call all those people and pay them and see if they want to put on the event rather than event people. And I'm going to ask the motion picture catering and craft service people if they want to cater it. And I'm going to ask the lighting people if they want to design the lighting for it. And I'm going to ask the hair and makeup trailers if they want to drive in and put them in and open those up and show people. And that's going to be our Backlot. And it's going to be less about the glitz and glamour and more about the industry and what we do technically. And I said it out loud, and I was like, what does that mean? I have no idea. And she and Cal Cullen at the Hale Foundation just said, fine tune that, write it down, elaborate, find other people that want to support that. This sounds incredible. And that's what we did. We employed 150 people on October 28th to create a Backlot. And what was really cool that we've never done before is we now had the community really interfacing with the industry, and the industry getting to see who in the community supports this. And I remember them looking at the program and looking at the projection on the hangar wall, and they're like, who knew that, these people, and one of the things they said, where's Tri-Health? They were involved, shouldn't we? And you're just asking great questions and noticing things about who was getting back involved, who wasn't involved, and we should reach out to. And for one day, but it was really 2 months, it was more than just a paycheck, and it wasn't a huge paycheck, but we built morale. We worked towards a common goal. It felt like a production. And I had a guy who was probably 27, 28, say to me the day before the event, and he said, I just got to tell you, Kristen, this is the most fun I've had in 6 months. And whatever we're doing and whatever it turns out to be, thank you. And that was enough. That one moment was enough to me to say, this makes sense to me. So we're very close to seeing a resolution in the actors' strike. I don't think anything will be greenlit before the end of the year. But I can tell you, with that $75 million in new tax credits next year, and the hunger and the appetite for getting more production here, and I think the last 2 months, just keeping those people engaged long enough to not find another industry and feel like they still are proud of the work that we do out of this market. that hopefully the next 2 years are going to be the best yet.
It will be a busy time, and if you have not attended Backlot, put that on your calendar for next year, next fall in October, because it is a lot of fun. It's just a great evening to celebrate the film industry. As we get ready to wrap up, again, we have people here who are entrepreneurs, they're starting out in their careers, they want to advance in their careers. What kind of advice would you give them to be an advocate for themselves and their group?
Just, if it was said prior, I apologize, I didn't hear the first panel, but listen to your voice. Listen to your inner voice and trust that. And that's I think, one of the greatest pieces of advice I was ever given is just, if you start listening to all the other noise, then your inner voice becomes less heard to your own self. And if you can listen to that and stay focused on that, then I think you have the foundation that you need to really go anywhere you want to be and advocate for that voice.
Good advice. We may have time for one or two questions. If anyone has a question for Kristen about the industry or what she does. Yeah.
So, I guess just as a business owner, you know, when you said you advocate for a lot of people, you're like in all these different places, like what do you do to recharge? Because it can be very, like, I don't know, you get very tired and drained trying to do everything for everyone else that sometimes you forget yourself. So, like, what do you do personally to recharge so that you're able to?
Well,
The question is, what does Kristen do to recharge?
And it changes too. I found myself, there was a day on Backlot where I was in a Zoom with some people planning something, and I mean, in one moment I was like, I'm gonna cry in a second, and they're gonna see it. And I'm like, to your point, I need a minute to recharge. So I do two things. One of the things I do is I sit in my car with the seat warmer on, and this is one of my happy places, and I think about what it is, and I take that time, whether it's in my driveway or my parking lot downtown or wherever it is, and I take that time to just start remembering priorities. Because I will come out of meetings and I feel like I'm gonna go a million different directions, or I will come out of a Zoom or a meeting where I feel like, okay, there's a million things to do, but I have to reprioritize, and I wanna make sure that those priorities are not going to get lost along the way because you are advocating for so many things. That's one thing. So taking that moment for myself and remembering that. And then the exact opposite of that is I reach out to my inner circle. And you know, they're in different industries, but I reach out to them and I bounce ideas off of them. And I either feel validated or I feel like they had a better idea and I need to be, but that recharges me in a way because I feel alone so often because of the advocacy of all those groups, that sometimes you just need, whether it's a leadership group or a trusted friend group or an advisory, you just need to have those moments where, you know, you realize that you're not crazy or you are crazy, and these people can help ground you again. But I really do believe that in shared communication, that's really helpful, and also taking a little bit of time just for you.
One more.
I have a question. Do projects come to you, or are you seeking the projects? Like, what's the process? Do you call directors, or do they contact you? Where do you pitch this?
Yeah, and there's not one formula. Fortunately for Greater Cincinnati, every project that has come here to shoot has come back for a second or third project because of the experience they had while here, which has been one of our greatest calling cards to the industry. I don't call directors directly and say, hey, what are you working on, unless I know them very well and have that trusted friendship with them. But usually what I'll do is I'll reach out to producers that I know and I say, our queue just opened as a state. There's plenty of money here. Is there anything I can do or any projects you want me to look at closer? I'd love to see if I can help you get it closer to being greenlit. However I can do to help you in your process and take some of the work off your load, I'll do that for you. So sometimes it is a cold call like that, and other times it's a reference or an experience that someone shared and said you should call Ohio or you should call Film Cincinnati. They've been great to work with. So both, if the phones aren't ringing, you certainly start reaching out to them. But lucky for us, the reason we expanded the program is we were turning away 30 to 35 projects a quarter and sending them to other states that had more tax credits, because we had more projects applying that we could accommodate with our current tax credits. So hopefully by doubling that, we'll see that work just pick up here and double also.
And Kristen and Film Cincinnati do go to like the Sundance Film Festival, Cannes Film Festival. So she works the crowd when they are there at that film festivals. One of my proudest moments was when we were walking down the street at Park City during Sundance Film Festival. And I happened to have a Film Cincinnati hat on. And he said, "Are you Kristen?" I go, no, that's Kristen. And then this guy says, "Oh my word, we worked in Cincinnati on such and such production. It was great, and you were great, and everything was great." I mean, just somebody that she happened to run into on the street. So that
could have gone either way.
It could have, that's true. But that's the kind of reputation that Film Cincinnati has in the film business, in the film industry, and of course, the reputation that Kristen has among the producers and among the leaders in the film industry. Kristen, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
And
Thanks,
all
you
you
guys.
do here.